Hey everyone, Mike Wardinski here with naturemike.com, and today I'm going to talk all about how Lightroom and Photoshop communicate with one another. In this video you'll learn how Photoshop and Lightroom handle your images, when to use save versus save as, how to sort and search for photos in Lightroom, and how to synchronize folders when Lightroom fails to recognize a particular photo. So if you look here, I have a photo of a bison and it's a RAW file. I know it's a RAW file because if I look at the title here, it says CR2. That's Canon's extension for their RAW format. So I've got this nice frosty bison here, and I've done a few edits to it, but let's say we want to open it up in Photoshop. To do that, that's very easy. You just come over to the image or in the film strip here and control-click on a Mac. That'd be a right-click on a PC, choose Edit In, and then Edit in Adobe Photoshop. And that will bring you open the Photoshop window. Now that we're in Photoshop, we no longer have a RAW file, and when we save this, we're going to have to save it as a Tiff or a PSD or any number of file formats. So I'm just going to do a quick edit here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Maybe I'll do something extreme and do a hue saturation and just make the bison blue, just so you can kind of see the difference when I get back into Photoshop. So now we need to save this now that we have our blue bison. So to do that, all I have to do is File, Save. And it's going to save the file. I can see the progress bar down in the left-hand side. And when I pop back over to Lightroom, I should have a blue bison right next to my original RAW file. And sometimes it takes a second for this thumbnail to populate here. And there we go, we have our blue bison. There's no need to worry about Photoshop overwriting your RAW files because Photoshop never actually works on the RAW file anyway. It takes it into Photoshop and then converts it to something else and will save it in addition to your original RAW file. Now let's say we want this bison maybe green. We don't like the blue bison, we actually want a green bison. So I'm gonna go back into Photoshop and I'm gonna go to my hue. Actually, maybe do a pink, or a magenta bison, that looks pretty good. Now, I'm not being serious with these edits. I just want something obvious for you guys to be able to see. So let's say we like magenta bison, and I'm going to go to File, and this time, instead of choosing Save, I'm going to choose Save As. Because if I choose Save right now, it's going to overwrite my blue bison that I already have. So I'm going to choose Save As. And file format, I usually leave this as a TIFF. It's a very universal lossless format, and it can be used in Photoshop programs or any Adobe programs, as well as a variety of other image editing software. So TIFF tends to be a little more universal than the standard Photoshop format. So that's what I keep it in. I usually always save my layers, and let's just call this one Pink Bison. And we'll hit save. And when you get this dialog, just hit OK. You don't need to change anything here. And it's saving in the lower left corner. And now when we pop back over to Lightroom, we should have our pink bison, our blue bison, and then our original RAW file. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to make it purple just so you can see our original. And then I'm going to make these two blue. So we have a little bit of organization here, and it's very easy to reference these, as if pink and blue bison weren't easy to recognize. So to recap here, anytime you're opening a RAW file into Photoshop, you can simply use the File Save button, and it'll come into Lightroom with the exact same name, except it'll have an Edit TIFF extension instead of the original CR2 extension. Now, if you want to do multiple edits, that's when you have to do the Save As. As you can see here, we have our pink bison, the original file, and the Edit TIFF, and then the CR2. Now, luckily for me, all these files came into Lightroom right next to each other because I have my sorting set to capture time. And these photos were obviously all taken at the very exact time. They're just different versions or different edits of the same image. So that's why they're all right next to each other. Now, to make sure that your Lightroom is set up to capture time, simply go to the grid view. I'm going to hit the G key to do that. And now we see the grid view. And now we're going to go to View, Sort, and make sure capture time is checked. You can only do this in grid view. I don't know why, but Lightroom will not allow you to sort when you're in the loop view. So make sure you hit the G key and you're in the grid view, and then you can get this dialog. You can also sort by the added order, the time the photos were added into Lightroom, the last time you edited it, and then also the edit count, the number of times you've edited a particular photo. And there's many other ways to sort, but typically I find that capture time is usually the best, and that's what I keep it at. You can also choose to sort in ascending or descending, meaning if I have ascending checked and capture time checked, the images that I captured first are going to show up on the top. If I change this to descending, the images I captured first would show up on the bottom. Going back to Photoshop, I want to point out one thing here. When I go to the File Save As menu, Photoshop already knows where these files came from in Lightroom, and by default, that folder is exactly where they're going to go to. So you usually don't need to change this folder unless you know that you want to save them somewhere else that's not referenced by Lightroom. Okay, let's go back into Lightroom here. And let's see that these photos did not come in next to each other. So to do that, I'm just going to go to View, Sort, and change this to, let's do Added order. Okay, so we have our blue bison and our pink bison, but our original is nowhere to be seen. And let's say we want to compare these. Well, one, we could just go to View, Sort, Capture Time. But if for some reason that didn't work, I could also look at this blue one that has my original file name here. And it's 20A1441. So to search for that, I can come up to our toolbar on the top. If you don't see this, it's the backslash key. We'll hide and show that. I can go to text, and I'm just going to type in 1441, the last four numbers here. And there we go, there's our original. Now the pink one isn't showing up here. That's because I changed the entire file name to just Pink Bison. And sometimes I'll actually leave these file numbers right in the name. That way I can easily find the original RAW and any other incarnation of the photo that I edited. Now I want to point out that I'm searching within this one particular folder. Watch what happens if I click on this folder and do my search for 1441. Nothing shows up, and that's because I'm only searching this folder. So if you have a big catalog and you have no idea what folder that photo might be in, you can always come up to your parent folder. This is why it's nice to put all of your images under a single folder, because I can come up to 2022 and then I'll do a search for 1441, and there are my photos that I'm looking for. Now I know these are in 2022, but where in the heck are they down here? Well, that's really easy to find out. All I need to do is control click on a Mac or right click on a PC, and then we're going to go down to Go to Folder in Library. Now this is going to take us to the exact folder that these photos are in the library. And I'm just going to go to View, Sort, Capture Time, and we're back to where we started with our pink, blue, and brown bison. Now this is all well and good, but what if Lightroom, no matter how much you search by capture time and by file name, you still can't find the image that you just edited in Photoshop? And sometimes this happens, especially once you start using the Save As. If you use it a couple of times and create a couple different versions, sometimes the link between Photoshop and Lightroom gets broken. It's just sort of a bug, and it's been around since, as far as I can remember, really. They communicate really well together until they don't. And so sometimes this happens, you're working, you're editing, and then it just doesn't come back into Lightroom. No matter how hard you search for it, it's just never going to be here. So there is a way to synchronize the folder on your hard drive with your Lightroom catalog. I know that sounds a little confusing, but basically what happened is you saved in Photoshop and you chose the folder. Let's say we chose 2022 1-9, and we know it's there. We can even navigate in our Finder or Explorer and see it on the hard drive, yet it's still not in Lightroom. So it's really easy to tell Lightroom to reference that. All we need to do is come over here to 2022-1-9. I'll control click or right click on a Mac, or sorry, right click on a PC, and I'll choose synchronize folder. Now I know there's one photo in here because I set it up for this example. And if there's no photos in the folder, this will just come up with 0 and then you just cancel it out. But if you see a number here, I would recommend checking show import dialog before importing. And this is just going to open up the normal import dialog like you would see if you're importing from a memory card. That way you can actually see what the photo looks like before you import it. So I'll go ahead and hit synchronize, and this is going to be a black and white bison that I already edited in Photoshop. And there we go, there it is. And so if we want to import this, all we have to do is make sure this is set to add, and it should be because Lightroom knows that we're trying to synchronize the folder. And then I'm just going to come down to import. And once this is done, here we go. Now this is just showing us our previous import, because that's what Lightroom does by default. And so if we want to go back to the photo that the folder that we were just in with all of our other bison, all I have to do is control click on a Mac, right click on a PC, and then choose go to folder in library. And so here we are. Now we've got our pink, brown, black and white, and blue bison. I know I said that backwards, but you get the point. Now you might be thinking, well, that's all well and good if you know the folder that the photo is supposed to be in, but what if you don't even know that? Well, we can still work with this as long as we have a parent folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a real quick edit here. Let's go to our pink bison, and I'm going to just make it a different color. Oops. Let's make it purple. There we go, that looks pretty good. We got a purple bison now. So now I'm going to export this to the exact same folder that we're in. So I'm going to go to File, Export. And you don't really need to pay too much attention to what I'm doing. I just want another example here. So yep, that's where it's supposed to be. I'm going to export this, and I'm going to come here and reset our bison so it's pink again. And now let's go back to the library, because we're in the develop module here. We need to be in the library to see our folders here. And let's say I don't know that that purple bison is in this folder, but it is somewhere in one of these folders. All I need to do is go up to my top parent folder, and I will control click on a Mac, right click on a PC, and go to synchronize folder. And we're going to get this dialog. And it'll take a second, and this is going to show you if you're missing any photos, not just in 2022 or your parent folder, but any subfolder underneath it, including the subfolders underneath subfolders. I like to check show import dialog, that way I can see what photo or photos I'm actually missing, and then I'll hit synchronize. Now you can see Lightroom opened the import dialog, and there's our missing photo. It's checked. So now all we have to do is import this. And again, the reason I'm showing you this is I just wanted to show you that you don't need to know the exact folder that you're missing images in, as long as you have them all set up under a parent folder like I do. And so just hit import. And now we have our bison here, but again, we need to go to the folder that it's in. So to do that, control click or right click on a PC, and go to folder in library. And there we have all of our different versions of our bison. Now there may be times where you open a photo in Photoshop from Lightroom, you save it, it goes back into Lightroom, but then you want to open it right back up in Photoshop. Maybe you forgot to do something, or you just want to continue your workflow. So there's a couple of options you have to do that, and I want to discuss those now. So I'm going to hit the D key to go into the develop module. And I'm just going to make some basic edits here so it's different. I'm going to make this bison even more blue, just by tinting the midtones and maybe the shadows. Okay, so we got a really blue bison now. And now I'm going to control click or right click on a PC, edit in Photoshop. And we have three options. We could edit a copy with Lightroom Adjustments, just edit a copy, or edit original. So these bottom two are going to open up the original file and disregard any Lightroom edits that we did after we saved it back into Lightroom. And you'll have your original file, all the layers and all of that. The top one is gonna erase all the layers that we originally had in Photoshop and only bring in a flat file, but it's gonna have the Lightroom adjustments we did. So let's just, to demonstrate that, let's choose Edit the Original, and I'll hit Edit. Let's open up Photoshop, and you can see all those blue tints that I did to the shadows are gone now, and we just have our original bison, but we do have both of our layers still intact. So that's really nice. Now I'm gonna go ahead and close this out and go back to Lightroom. This time I'm gonna edit it with Lightroom Adjustments and hit Edit. And you can see we have our layers been flattened, but we do have those blue tints in our shadows. So depending on what you want to do with the image, you may want those Lightroom edits to come into Photoshop, or maybe you want to edit all the layers and you don't want the Lightroom edits. And back into Lightroom, edit in Photoshop. The last option is just edit a copy. And this is exactly the same as the original, except it's going to duplicate this image. So we're going to have two versions of it. A reason to do this, maybe you like the blue bison, but you want to make it a rainbow bison or whatever. You know, you can have your blue to compare with the rainbow version. Or another good reason to do this is, you know, software is not perfect, and once in a while files get corrupted. So if you edit a copy, if your file gets corrupted, at least you have that original starting point to go back to. Whereas if you just do the original and the file gets corrupted, you kind of have to start from scratch. So that would be another reason to edit a copy. The only downside is you're going to have multiple versions and it could get confusing and just clutter up your library a little bit. Finally, there's one more reason to edit a copy, but it gets a little bit confusing, so just bear with me here. Let's say we want to take this photo back into Photoshop because we want to edit one of our layers or add another layer or do some sort of other Photoshop edit. But we want to keep our layers, and we also really like these added blue tints that we've done to the Tiff file. But in order to do so, we have to edit as a copy. So let's choose Edit, and it's going to come into Photoshop, but we're going to lose these blue tints that we have. So there we go. We have our original and we have our layers. And I'm just going to do something real quick here. I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to use the clone stamp just to kind of clone out some of that snow there, just so you can see a difference. And now I'm going to save it. I'll hit Command S or Control S on a PC. I can also go up to File, Save. I don't need to do Save As because I already edited a copy, so there's no reason to add another copy. We'd have 3 versions then instead of just 2. Okay, so it just saved. Let's go back into Lightroom, and you're going to notice I'm going to get this little up arrow. That's telling me that the photo has been changed in Photoshop. And so if I just click on it, I'll get this dialog box that says, the metadata for this photo has been changed by another application. Should Lightroom import settings from disk or overwrite settings with those from the catalog? If I choose overwrite, it's just going to keep the photo the exact same as this one, which is not what I want. I want to actually import those settings or edits that I made in Photoshop. So I'm going to choose the import settings from disk option. And you're going to notice it's going to go back to the sort of grayish version we have, but you'll notice that clump of snow is gone. If I click on this one, you see that snow there? That's the edit that I did. So I removed the snow, but I also lost those tints in the shadows. Well, now all we have to do is click our deep blue bison that has the Lightroom edits. I'll go hit the D key to get to the develop module. There's our edit. And I will command click on a Mac, control click on a PC to select our other bison. And then I'm just going to hit synchronize. And when this dialog pops up, I'm going to hit check all and then synchronize. So now my Lightroom edits from this photo are now on the one that we removed the snow from. And we still have all of our layers if we were to open this back up into Photoshop. I know that's a little confusing and you might not do that often, but I want to shine a little bit of light on situations that can pop up sometimes. Okay, let's talk about file names real quick. Let's say I wanted to keep this original file number on these other ones that I actually called Pink Bison. That's really easy to do. I'm just going to click on this one, and we're going to go into the library and down to metadata, and here is our file name. And so I'm just going to highlight just this section here, and I'm going to hit Command C to copy. That'd be Control C on a PC. I'm going to go to my one that says Pink Bison, click on it, and I'll just paste that in there, Command V, Control V on a PC, and I go to this one, Command V, and hit Enter. And so you can see our file names change. Now, when we do a search for that number, these will all show up together. And that's just a little bit of a personal preference as far as having that file number in there. It's up to you. It's not really needed, but I like it for organizational purposes. Okay, I know I covered a lot, and some of the stuff can sometimes be a little confusing. So feel free to leave me a comment down below if you have a question or a particular situation that I didn't talk about here, and I'd be more than happy to address that. In the meantime, enjoy your editing, and of course, don't forget to check out naturemike.com for more videos, tutorials, and workshops. See you in the next video.